1 in 5 suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
It's always plural, huh? It's going to be that way.
It is plural, and I'm Dave,
time.
and this is my lovely co-host who's slightly disappointed today for some reason. I have no idea.
That's it? I'm reduced
That's
to a
Marla.
co-host. I'm his wife. I'm Marla, and this is Mental Health Mondays.
My
Welcome.
co-host in life. There you go.
Okay.
We want to remind you guys to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. They are a podcast host for a podcast called History Rated R, where their motto is history is full of effed up ish. But what are we going to do? Pretend like it never happened? Why don't you sit down and have a drink with your host, actor and writer Will Sterling, and his more qualified former presidential speechwriting co-host, Dr. Craig Smith. Dr. Smith has written over 22 books. Many, if not most, are publications used in classrooms at the university level, and he was a presidential speechwriter for President Ford and H.W. Bush. Presidents Ford and H.W. Bush. Will is an actor-writer. Together they unpack this silly, salacious, scandalous, and serious stuff in history. Buckle up. When we come back, we are honored to have as our guest Dr. Craig Smith and Will Sterling.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A dollar today keeps the stigma away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Well, as Dave said earlier, I don't know why these glasses are on my head. There's no sun here. There are lights, but they're off. And welcome, both of you, to Mental Health Mondays.
Dr. Craig Smith and Will Sterling. Now, should we call you Dr. Smith?
Hey,
Okay.
it's easier. I'm not a real doctor.
Well, the other thing I wanted to say is, my amazing husband forgot to say that you've written 22 scholarly books. Scholarly is an important word.
Yeah, that means they don't sell.
Or do they?
Yeah.
So,
you know what? You guys, I was checking out some of your podcast on History Rated R.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are a crack up.
It is. We're much more on better behavior today. Well, me and actually Craig is the one who
please don't.
keeps it
We haven't had
together.
our martinis. That's when we really get going.
You know what? I have to say, I don't know if I should feel away. Maybe I should have made the overture. I was thinking maybe this is going to be a combo hybrid show.
We should have brought a shaker.
We should.
At
full-
least.
I know.
At least. Well, how'd you guys come up with the show, first of all?
Craig and I have dinner. Have been having dinner. Over a year since I met him when I was a student at Cal State Long Beach. And he would just tell me all the... Can I swear on this podcast?
You can say
Of course, yeah, you can say
anything
anything.
you want.
Okay, he would just tell me all these crazy fucked up things about history. And I realized I was like, man, the presidents, all these things, all these people that we revere and all these things throughout
Right.
history, that's there is no such thing as the good old days or make America great again, because it's never been
Great.
what?
Especially
when-
prior to social media.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So let's talk about it, and let's talk about it in a funny, goofy way, like we would over dinner and drinks, like we do. So that kind of was the.
Yeah, I wanted a show called The Martini Hour.
I love it.
And we ramped it up, and Potty Mouth over here, decided we would go R.
I
and so
am the rated R part of history rating.
I
he is
love
rated
it.
R.
Man, I heard, especially when you guys were talking about meatloaf. I mean, what kind of subject is meatloaf
It was
for political history?
we were talking about Richard Nixon,
Right.
and
Exactly.
so we had done an episode. In the first segment is usually a history of a cocktail or a food,
Right.
whatever we're cooking, or whoever the guest of honor story-wise, their favorite drink. And this was Nixon's favorite food. So we were talking about meatloaf, and that was the first time I got Craig to cry laughing just because I had described it as a loaf of meat.
A loaf of meat,
Which he thought
as
was
opposed to a
disgusting.
loaf of snot.
A loaf of snot also, yeah, the snot loaf. That's in there.
That thing about it was a vitality loaf in the 40s.
Yes, that was some woman in a recipe described it as a vitality loaf, which I just think is charged with grossly sounding sexual energy.
Exactly.
And so I was like, why would anybody ever call this a vitality loaf?
loaf.
That sounds like a...
Darling, I'm wearing the loaf you love.
So the episode was called Watergate or President Nixon's vitality loaf.
Hilarious. I just have a quick question. How do you get to the research? Is it you, Dr.?
Yeah. I mean, 22 books, so
Right. I mean,
I've already done the homework.
But not just that, but about their food choices and drink choices.
well, this one, that's his assignment.
That's
Okay.
my work.
Okay.
That's my research.
So I'm like, because that to me in itself is unique.
Yeah.
Like that approach is like, oh, so I'm going to find out,
Yeah.
if this is a Stroganoff
yeah.
president or what.
I've learned so many fascinating things about just little tidbits of history of food. And I try to cite the websites I find it on because I'm not like a history writer, so I'm just reading from other people's
it.
web pages
Got it.
who have done the research, and I'm going to credit them, but I'm not sitting there like
Right.
elaborately constructing a bunch of
Are you
stuff.
doing that? Have you done that in the last 2 presidential terms?
the
Not
past
yet.
2 episodes?
No. Like with the last 2, like with
Oh.
Trump, and now we have Biden in office. Are you still looking up?
We are
Or is it
going
passed?
to release Reagan next week.
Reagan
nice.
comes out on
Okay.
Friday.
Okay.
This
And
Friday.
we have booked a little bit on Clinton, and then we're going to have some surprises coming down the road.
Oh,
Yeah, we might-
I love a good surprise.
We're going to go to more women.
Oh, wow.
That's a request, which I agree with. So we want to keep. It's tough because it's like Craig has all these things in his head and all these lectures he's done. So it's easy to default to just all the things that he knows.
Right.
But then as we get requests, I'm like, I do want to open it up to other things.
Well, I guess when you go further back in history you go, it was really a male-driven
narrative.
sort of narrative. So that becomes difficult to actually get some of that information. That just makes your job a little more difficult.
It does. I mean, we have this thing, we call it the fan fact check, but very few people actually fact check us. I think because they're like, we'll take your word for it.
Right.
But if there's historians out there who listen, maybe we get some details wrong. But if it ever comes down to something where it's like, it's hard to actually say definitively because it's history and however it's recorded, my default is just to shout, "Were you there?
Yeah. You talking to me?
Yeah, were you there? Prove it."
I love that.
Well, you
So-
know
Well,
what? Social
yeah.
mean is perfect for that.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
you know,
It's not the clap back.
Your
it's
word is the last
It's the
word.
preemptive clap. I love that.
Yeah.
So since this is Mental Health Mondays, I guess Dr. Smith, Craig, I'm sorry, going all the way back, I mean, there were times before you were able to really just be your natural self.
God, yes.
Where homosexuality was considered a mental illness. I mean,
Yeah,
for many of you, that's hard to believe, but there was a time, and it's not even that long ago.
No.
No, it was 1968. It was finally removed from the books.
Wow.
And it was 1975 that you could finally get employment as an out homosexual by the federal government. So
Wow.
it's fairly recent. And that was part of the reason I was stuck in the closet, because when I figured out that, it was more fun wrestling with the boys than kissing the girls, I went to the library and
Yeah.
I looked it up. I was in the 10th grade. And I looked it up and I went, oh, my God, I'm mentally ill. I can't tell anybody this.
And that's almost like a self-driving
Wow.
narrative to really say, I thought I was cool before, but now I just found out I'm mentally ill.
Yeah, I mean,
And
we're
I
talking
felt normal.
19 yeah, and we're talking like 1959, 1960, and then my father was in the Navy,
Yeah.
and they would have parties at the house, and the sailors and my dad would tell these fag jokes, unquote, and make fun of the queers, and that drove me further into the closet.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be better when I went to college, but it wasn't.
Did you have siblings?
I had 2 sisters. Yeah,
Okay.
I have 2 sisters.
Okay.
Now, were they aware of
no.
the struggle that you were going through?
No, nobody was.
He means
Not
like
then.
the
I mean,
closet,
the
closet,
real closet, like
Real
the deep,
no one knew.
Oh God, yeah.
deep
yeah.
closet.
Wow.
Yeah, nobody knew.
Wow. So, and the thing about it is, we say all the time, even at the beginning of the intro of the show, that 1 in 5 people are actually touched with real mental illness and that suffer with what we call a brain difference. But there's no need to add to that falsely. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we were talking even before we were recording a little bit about how people are constantly now just diagnosing themselves like, I have narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
But now because of the internet and podcasts and all these things, people are convinced that they have, where I do think that takes away from visibility of people who actually do have mental illnesses.
Yeah,
Like,
and there's
need
various
the
levels
spotlight.
of self-centeredness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just selfish.
Yeah.
You're not a narcissist. You're not a clinical narcissist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, you know, by definition, every toddler would be a narcissist.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'm just
Oh, yeah.
authentic. Yeah.
That's right.
Authentic. Wow. Yeah.
Well,
so we've heard it all. Go ahead.
And
Sam,
we were also talking before we actually came on and we're sharing this conversation. I was very intrigued at the process by which you had to actually come out of the closet with your profession. And you were saying in 1975, these particular things were not something that you could actually come forward with. But then in 1976, was that the year that you were able to, when you got your
No.
security clearance? So
Yeah, but I stayed in the closet for
okay.
another 20 years, as a matter
but
of fact.
but you were able to clear.
I was able to clear because the FBI asked the wrong question when we were going through my
Got it,
interview.
got
And they asked me if I'd had sex with another man. They did not ask me if I was homosexual.
Right.
And this was you were getting a job as a speechwriter.
Speechwriter for
Yeah,
President Ford, so I had to have deep security clearance, and I got it. That pushed me further into the closet. Now I'm working for the Republican Party. You see how far into the closet now I have to go.
you were in
Now
there.
I'm in
already.
a big tunnel,
Yeah, shoved in.
under the West Wing. So, and then eventually, I went back to Washington, D.C. I had other jobs. It was again for the Republican Party. I mean, I was the deputy director of the National Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee.
Wow.
I mean, I was meeting with Vice President Bush. I was meeting with Ronald Reagan, and so I just had the mask of anonymity.
Well, I have to say this. This is a real direct question. What we say here as well on Mental Health Monday is you're not alone. So meaning, is there was there a connection that you were able to make that was also quiet and private with others that may have been in your situation?
Not at that point.
Okay.
It
No.
just
No,
you
you
probably
couldn't
didn't feel
risk-
safe to
nobody-
even any
nobody
risk.
on our side of the aisle was risking that kind of thing.
Got it.
Wow.
It wasn't until I got back into the academic community. I had taught at San Diego State, and there was prejudice there. I had taught at the University of Virginia, and there was an underground there. And then I went to the White House, and so after several iterations, I wound up at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, no underground, and then eventually came to Cal State Long Beach, and that's where I felt comfortable enough to come out.
All
Right here
right.
in
Hold that right
California.
there. More conversation. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Self-injury is any action that intentionally produces physical self-harm without direct suicidal intent. It affects 2 million people each year in the United States alone, about 4% of the population, and most commonly starts around the ages of 12 through 14. And those that have experienced this have experienced some type of trauma or other stresses in their lives.
According to the Partnership Development Group, self-injury actions can include cutting, picking, burning, bruising, puncturing, embedding, scratching, hitting. Self-harm is usually a solitary activity that's hidden from others, and contrary to the stigma, it's not typically an attention-seeking behavior.
Self-harm is usually a symptom of a bigger psychological or environmental problem. Addressing the main issue, seeking therapeutic support, and/or considering appropriate medication are the most effective at resolving the desire to hurt oneself. If you recognize any of these symptoms in yourself or someone you know, please seek professional help immediately.
This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my scene.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, I'm excited to get back to our conversation with, I'm going to keep calling you Dr. Craig Smith.
I insist.
Call you the whole thing
Doctor.
every time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Doctor,
you worked hard to achieve that.
Hold on, let me look. Dr. Craig Smith.
Yes.
And
yes.
Will.
That's fine. I'm never gonna be a doctor.
I'm not even going to use your last name.
That's okay.
You just Will.
Listen, if the world could know me eventually just by the name Will, that
Yeah,
would be
no,
something.
you made it.
There's some
That's how you
amazing
know you made
Wills.
it.
I was
You're in
gonna
good
say
company.
I'm in good company, but it's stiff competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is sterling.
Yes. Yes, he is sterling. So right before we jump and turn the discussion over to you, Will, to finish up what Marla was asking you, just a follow-up, Craig, did some of those issues cause you to really, in the way that you had to deal with life all those years, cause you to deal with real depression?
Yeah, it did. I was depressed until I came out, and I think the reason is you project a persona, and the further that persona is from your authentic self and your soul, that gap can lead to such a tension that you get into depression.
Yeah.
And once I came out and got into writing even more, the depression evaporated and went away.
Wow.
It was really great. You know, the people who have depression, one of the ways around it is to do something creative. Winston Churchill painted because of the black dog that hounded him, and the depression would go away. For me, it was writing. I mean, it's crazy.
It's cathartic.
To 22 books.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's because I'm writing constantly.
Yeah,
to
to
keep
get
the
that
black dog
off
away.
your back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, Will, now you mentioned that well, in our family we have a couple of kids that deal with what we call brain differences.
Okay.
That's one of the ways that we sort of destigmatize the issue.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that your wife suffers with the brain difference as well.
Yes, she has. Diagnosed depressive and anxiety and cyclothemia, which is I got these notes from her last night to make sure I didn't relay any of this
I've not heard
Yeah,
that
I've never heard of
information.
cyclopenia either.
It's a form of bipolar, but it's super rare, and it's on the less extreme side, but it's still hypomanic, hypodepressive. There's still highs and lows, but not to the degree to which someone who's bipolar 1 or even bipolar 2 is.
Yeah.
But it's still technically a form of bipolar. It's just more rare.
Now, do they deal with that with just therapeutic methods of talk therapy, or do they have to do with medication as well?
She and I really bonded when we first started dating over therapy, because we were both big proponents of going to therapy and talking about our stuff, and so we wanted to normalize these things, and she was very open about like medications she was on, like antidepressants, which she's been on since she was 16. And that helped a little bit. She's always described this feeling of like there's always been something going on, but didn't have the resources, or even as she was growing up, parents or somebody in her life who didn't necessarily believe her or take it, know what to do with it. Because especially as a teenage girl, it's like you're just being a crazy teenage girl,
Exactly.
And it's like, no, there's something really going on here. So she's taking medication for depression since she was 16, wasn't treated for anxiety until she was 22. And then wasn't diagnosed or treated for cyclothemia until she was 27.
Wow.
And she told me, though, I guess bipolar doesn't really make itself super apparent until someone's in their 20s.
Yeah, that's what we found as well.
Yeah. So
because when our kids were going through their issues, even as they were sort of middle school into high school, the diagnosis was always changing all along. It didn't really stick until they were a little bit
20s,
older.
Yeah.
And she kind of fumbled through a bunch of things trying to figure that out, and she is a suicide survivor as well. When she was 23, attempted suicide, and I think that's something that she and I talk about too, and I always want to like her to know, and for listeners to know too. It's like, I think we tend to paint people who have survived a suicide attempt or addicts as people who are almost lesser than because there's something wrong with them, like who would do such a thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's truly, as far as I've come to witness it, no person more strong than someone who could be at the literal bottom of existence via mental health, via addiction, whatever it is, and have the fortitude to come back and to continue going every day. for people who don't experience those things personally or firsthand with somebody who's very close, there's no understanding of what it's like. And I'm sure you guys this is the fight you're fighting constantly.
Absolutely.
It's like, unless you actually know what it looks like, it's not what the movies say. It's not everybody's a narcissist.
Before
suddenly.
you
It's
paint
not,
with that broad brush.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be a little more empathy is what we
Dave's
need.
told my grandson before, he was talking about being fearful.
Yeah.
And David, we were talking about bravery.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave said, listen, you can't be brave without being afraid.
Yeah.
In other words, those two things go hand in hand.
Right.
So it's a very similar, understanding
Yeah.
of what you're speaking of.
Yeah, and I want her to know that constantly. Is this thing is like and it's sad because not everybody does survive a suicide attempt, but you did that. You know what I mean? And there's incredible strength and bravery to not come back from this place.
And that's an important thing about people who deal with brain differences. It's a support system.
Right.
It sounds like you're a great
I was
support
gonna say
system.
that's
Try
also
to
try to be. Yeah.
just the fact you can tap in and have that understanding. I just give you
Yeah.
crazy kudos for
Absolutely.
that. This is my clap from a distance.
Okay.
Yes, it's the
And,
fingernails.
I
It
like
keeps their
It's
hands
the
from
nails.
actually
This just
actual
goes-
touching.
This is how we
Yes.
clap when your nails are ridiculous.
She also puts up with my shit. So
Well,
it's,
she's also wonderful, and I think we should point out she just finished a master's degree at
Wow.
Harvard.
She did, yeah.
Congratulations.
just graduated from
Nice.
Harvard.
I love that. So speaking of, I would assume that once you become president, that you deal with an inordinate amount of anxiety.
No, I heard it's a walk in the park. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen presidents come in nice and looking
Right,
all,
and they all
full of
leave
vitality,
like-
and they
Yeah.
all leave.
What do you
like,
mean, Sonny? Exactly.
They age like 20 years in a matter of 4 years.
yeah.
So can you speak to that? Have you actually been witness to any of that? I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah. I mean, President Ford, we had crisis that we had to go through. One of the speeches that I had to write, I was actually away and had to be whisked back to the White House when the government in Phnom Penh in Cambodia seized an American ship.
Wow.
And we had to get the word out and handle that crisis. And we were sending in a black ops operation to rescue our people.
Wow.
And it was very successful. So we began with a crisis. We were sweating. What's going to happen? Did the black ops work? It's like when you saw they went in and killed bin Laden.
Yeah,
Right.
Can you
absolutely.
imagine watching that group go in?
Yeah.
Or when Jimmy Carter, when the rescue of our ambassador
Diplomats,
embassy
yeah.
crew could not be saved. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
world-shaking event.
Yeah. Yeah.
And poor Joe Biden must feel like Job. I mean, my gosh,
man.
one bad thing after another.
Yeah,
that the
even when
guy's gotta
things are
cope
going
with.
well, you can't really, before you can say it, something else bad happens.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is maybe this is sort of like an inside look now that we have you trapped in our studio. Are the words that the speechwriter writes, is that really the words of the actual president, or is that you speaking in the president's voice, so to speak?
They're all very different. When I wrote for President Ford, I met with him. I said, what do you want to say? Here's what I'm suggesting. I would write the speech. He would deliver it.
Yeah.
When I wrote for H.W. Bush, he would come in and edit things and
Wow.
add things and change it around. So, and that I preferred because
Right.
that makes it more his.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But as a speechwriter, what you're looking for is what is the authentic persona that you can project for this person. And, I saw it in George H.W. Bush when he was running for president in 1980, and I wrote a speech for him back then in which he talked about a kinder, gentler America. And that became his signature quotation from his 1988 acceptance speech. But there were other people that were writing for him that wanted him to be a tough guy.
Yeah,
So you got
yeah.
no new taxes, read my lips.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, you're
Can you hear the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Right about now, I
Yeah.
would definitely take the kinder, gentler America. So,
and hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more from Dr. Smith and Will.
all right, the fun music lets you know that Marla's about to start cutting a rug.
Listen,
Marla's about to start
I am on strike.
dancing a jig.
I'm no longer going to do a pole dance without a pole.
Man.
This is ridiculous.
Oh, man.
So
you know
what I'm
we
gonna
all
do
look
is
forward to that.
I'm
We
gonna
bring
do-
our dollar bills every week.
I'm going to do this, and there's no dollars in the studio, and
All
that's
right,
why
so
I'm not
okay,
dancing.
whatever. So tell us what the poll question was last week. It's time for our poll question break.
Poll question last week, and I know that our guest last week, Ricky Minor, will be watching because, his ego wants to make sure that he's right.
He
or
did pretty
wrong.
good. He was doing pretty good.
Last week we asked this question. Listen up, because
Okay.
we're going to ask it to you.
Okay.
What percentage of adults experience serious mental illness each year? A, 2%, B, 5%, or C, 8%? Do you need the question again?
No. I would say B.
I would say B also.
So let me bounce right back, and I will tell you. I do believe it's 5%.
It's 5%.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And guess what? Ricky,
He didn't get that one either.
didn't get it.
So every
eight.
now and then, we usually usually the highest number, but every now and then I'm like, people
That's okay.
always guessing the highest number.
Don't feel
so
bad,
stick in the
Ricky.
middle.
This is Dr.
Yeah.
Craig Smith.
We'll
We
give
got
him
it.
another chance. What's the poll question for next week?
Next week, here's another one. Now, you have to tune in next week to find
Okay.
out if you get this,
Okay.
but you can answer here live in studio. Compared to homicide statistics in the United States, death by suicide is A, 50%,
Or one half.
Or one half.
The rate of homicide.
B, equal, which is 1 in 1, or C, 200%, which is twice as many.
Of
Compared to homicide
homicides.
statistics.
Suicide.
Death by suicide, is that half as much, equal,
well,
or
what-
twice
what,
as many?
What I do know, having been an advocate of gun control for a long, long time, is that 60% of the gun control deaths are suicides.
Yep.
So then.
So how that figures into that? Will will
Extrapolate.
tell you.
So it
Extrapolate.
sounds like more than 50% then.
Yeah.
What's B again?
B is 50, and C is 200, which
No,
is
B
more,
is
twice
equal.
as many.
B is
B is
equal, and C is
50%.
twice as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Okay. 200 just sounds like too much. I would say B also.
All right. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, you have to tune in next week to see what the correct answer is.
Well, I can say that if it's messed up, Will did it. We'll be back.
All right, we are back.
And by the way, we've got a lot of interaction here in our chat room. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And Francesca Fowles, you got to show up next week, too. You say 5%. Are you right or are you wrong?
Oh,
Is
she
it
said
B?
5%.
Oh,
That
she
was last
said
week's
no. She
answer.
also
She
said
got that
B.
right.
She said B.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Equal.
Okay.
All right. So, man, time flies when you're having fun, I guess. And we knew
Yeah,
after
we were.
doing a little research on you guys that a half an hour just
We
wouldn't
literally,
be
I
enough.
said, Dave, did we not? Did it? Hannah, Shane, what are you thinking? Like we couldn't have had martinis if we wanted to. How can we do that in a half hour? The ice is still this.
I can drink pretty fast.
We just switched to shots. It's okay.
There you go.
But anyway, you know what? This so much information, and what we love is just the personal journey. The personal journey, and what is very interesting about this conversation, and having you both as guests, is the personal impact that you both have had that you can share with both your environment and yourselves independently in your families. You know, we talked about, what happened, early on with you as far as the mental health and, coming out of the closet and all of that. And I'm saying that because it's freeing to people to feel like these are the things that you literally, when you're in a situation where, America or life has made you almost an outlier, we're the stigma that we're trying to break. I so appreciate this conversation with the two of you for collective reasons and independent reasons.
Yeah, I mean, even getting approval from Casey, my spouse, to say like, "Is it okay if I talk about this?" And she's like, "Yeah, please."
Man, I love that.
Because that's the whole point of taking the stigma away from this stuff. It needs to be normalized.
And
is
it also
regular.
shows the trust that she has in you as her support system as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of her.
And it shows that Dr. Smith trusts you too, and even though you're just one name, one word,
that's okay.
he still trusts you, and that speaks of his volumes.
So I
appreciate it. Thank you, Craig. Once I write 23 books, then we'll see what happens.
And here's a question for you, Will. Usually, guys in college, students in college, really, whether they're male or female, they're not usually trying to become really good friends with their professors. What was that dynamic like?
I was a student rep in the film department, and he was the former chair, and he was outgoing, and I was sort of incoming. And we had a dinner with the previous student rep, and just to kind of get a lay of the land of the department.
Yeah.
And I grew up. Not to say, Craig is very young, by the way. This is not a slight at all. He's 77 years young, and actually, I say often that I'm the 77-year-old and he's the 34-year-old. But we just connected on art and old movies and classic and music and different parts.
And you're very cute.
There you go. And so it was
making him blush.
It was a mentorship, really. That we became friends, but I didn't have access to peers that I could talk about the arts on a certain level with. Kind of modern stuff, yeah, but a lot of the things I'd grown up with, there was nobody in my life to talk about those things with. So Craig was and he's just been helpful career-wise, over the years, and in helping me get my foot in the door and making stuff happen. And it's been a plan that I laid a long time ago. It's a very gonna get in the well.
You played the long game.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, let me just tell you
That's a lot of foresight there.
I'm an intuitive I'm literally a chemistry. It's the attraction, the chemistry between the two of you.
Yeah.
Is undeniable.
It's fun.
This can't ever be a non-thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, someone in our chat room, Allison, I see you. She writes, "Please have them back."
Yeah. Well, the podcast
anytime.
is History Rated R. Where can we find that?
It's everywhere. iTunes,
Spotify.
Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you get your podcasts, you can find History Rated R.
Yeah, and it's a really great, informative yet fun, just easygoing, a great listen and a great way to spend any time of day that you have some free time. And if you're doing something in the background, let it be playing.
Would you guys like for me to stalk you on IG, because I'm an IG person?
Please.
And I'll be happy to stalk you. And I found that if you know who your stalkers are, you don't have to be afraid.
Yeah,
So if you know it's me,
Yeah.
then you don't have to. It'll be me, and it'll also then transfer from me looking in the windows.
That's how
of your
Craig and I
homes
became
and-
friends.
Oh, it's stalking.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, it
He was
works out.
stalking me, yeah.
And he's been stalking me since second grade.
Right before we go, this doesn't sound that. It sounded kind of pervy.
It was equally pervy. We've been married 34 years. He ran after me since we were 6 and 8. Come on.
Whoa.
Well, that's kind of true. Give us your parting thoughts as it relates to mental health.
Well, I think you're doing a wonderful thing. I mean, if there hadn't been
Thank you.
stigma, I wouldn't have been in the closet. I wish I'd come out earlier, because when I did come out in '96, there were a lot of people, some on the faculty who came out after, said, "Oh,
Wow.
if Craig come out, I'm coming out."
Right.
Yeah.
I could have done that work a lot earlier, and so I came out of a different era. But if you're out there, come out.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're out because you're a ball of fun. Will, what about you?
Get into therapy. If you haven't tried it yet, it might take a minute to find the right therapist, but the best thing you can do is talk about your feelings with an unbiased third party. And you'll know you found the right one when you feel it. And I think that's what scares people away, is they don't know, and they're like, this is just not for me. And I'm like, it might take 3, 4, 5 different people, but I swear to God and I promise it will change your life, and it will make you better.
All good things. Go ahead,
As we say, and I will always say, every conversation in regards to mental health is worth having and worth hearing, because it makes sure that you understand that you are not alone. You're not.
Absolutely. And so many more people are out there for you if you just actually come on out and make yourself available. The help is out there. The fun is out there. The mental wellness is out there. Peace of mind. Anyway, see you guys next week. Our guests have been Dr. Craig Smith and Will Sterling, host of History Rated R. Check it out if you haven't already. See you guys next week.
Bye.